Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Shibatani, I think I'd like to maybe bring this a little bit back to my home state of Colorado.
Yes, Congressman.
We'd had some devastating floods, as I'm sure you're probably aware of, earlier just a month or so ago. How could some of the high-altitude storage benefit in terms of being able to protect against some of the flooding like we saw in Colorado?
I think, Congressman, the primary premise of high-elevation storage is essentially yield retention during the periods of the rainy season. And to the extent that there are additional facilities that we can put above existing or terminal reservoirs in your state, it's almost a mass balance exercise. If you have 3 200,000 acre-foot reservoirs, one single 1 million acre-foot reservoir, it's all a question of attenuating that flood peak that the terminal reservoir operators have to then release, either through flood encroachment rules that they are mandated to release. So to answer your question, it's a simple question of retaining more yield upstream that we can then reserve for not only flood control benefits during time of the rainy season, but also serve as a potential commodity asset that, but for 4 or 5 months, that water could be used for a lot of beneficial purposes, including water supply, ag, municipal deliveries, as well as environmental flows, water quality enhancement, and recreational benefits as well. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but the whole concept is to retain more supplies upstream during time.
Well, no, I'd like to follow up actually on my good friend Mr. Huffman's comments there, because California, Colorado, we've seen explosions in growth and population. If we look at the entire country, 1960, the census pointed out we had about 130 million Americans. Now we're at 300 plus million Americans. You just described for me in Colorado how we might be able to save lives, save property, save a lot of damage to infrastructure with high altitude storage.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about hydro that he had brought up. Would there be an opportunity to be able to have hydroelectric power, which is going to benefit all of those communities as well? And as that drops down, you're the expert in this, to be able to reuse that same water to generate further hydroelectric power?
Absolutely, Congressman. That's one of the primary motivations of high elevation storage. The standard rules are that water, it rains every year. I can't guarantee how much, but it does rain every year, and the water always falls its national oceanic migration. You put a turbine in it, just converting potential energy to kinetic. And
Right.
Clean
Chairman McClintock brought up, that we've got a lot of projects that are apparently being able to be cash flowed off of this. What do you see as the number one impediment to developing some of these projects?
These new storage projects?
Yes.
I clearly feel today that the overlapping and almost redundant layers in certain environmental regulations that we're currently operating under is scaring away a lot of investors. I know private sector investors that are chomping at the bit to underwrite these facility projects. The first question they ask me is, have you secured your permits? And my answer is always, no, not yet. They're going to wait until all those permits and approvals are in place before they're ready to sign that check. And they will sign that check fast and move these infrastructure projects forward. So I don't want to leave the impression that I'm not supportive of these various environmental and very important environmental regulatory oversight processes. But let's face it, NEPA, CEQA, ESA, they were developed 30, 40 years ago. Other things have changed. These regulations haven't. And I've been doing environmental documents for 30 years, and I just can't seem to get them done fast enough to get some of these major infrastructure projects moving forward. Everything else is static except for the environment that's moving forward. That has to change.
So what you're pointing out, clarify for me if I'm inaccurate on this, we have a regulatory process that was established for the 20th century, maybe earlier on in the 20th century. We've now moved into the 21st century.
Correct.
And we've got new processes, new technologies, which we're able to do it more efficiently, still be able to respect the environmental concerns, which we all share,
right.
And to be able to address Mr. Barcelos's point that rather than taking 20 years to be able to develop a project, we could actually do it in a much more timely fashion, just with cleaning up that regulatory process.
You're absolutely correct, Congressman. And the one point I would quickly add here is that the shelf life for a lot of environmental documents is very, very short. The private sector develops methodologies, metrics very, very quickly. So by the time I bring a project for certification, it could be 10, 15 years old. The easiest way to oppose that project is just to make the claim that the best scientific information is no longer valid. 10 years has gone by, that's a legitimate concern. We have to recircle and start up from the beginning again, and we never get to that end point.
So it's time for the regulatory process to come out of the past, join us in the future, and to be able to build for a more prosperous country. Is that right?
At least stay on the same pace of change as the environment. The environment's changing, climate change is pushing it a certain way. Regulatory environment has to stay in pace with that.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.